Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 11 of Horsin Around here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz, with good friend and co-host, Mr. Pete Visco. We are here to talk about, let's just say, a bizarro, crazy, weird weekend of exciting three-year-old action throughout the country. Pete, how you doing tonight?
I'm pretty good. How about you? Happy Monday, all.
Happy Monday. Doing well. Like I said, we're going to be talking about a lot of things tonight, and we're going to have a special guest coming on here in just a minute as well. A good friend of the podcast, I think fair to say, and huge supporter of our live chat and of our co-hosts, and we really appreciate her wonderful patronage. We'll bring her on in just a minute. A few quick particulars. Pete, you can, of course, listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. You can follow me on X right there at H Kravitz, or the podcast in general. Also, please make sure you hit the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, and also hit that notification bell as well, which is on the upper right-hand corner of your YouTube page. And, of course, smash the old Paul Allen, smash that like button. We really appreciate that as well. The tip sheet, Pete, you and I, why don't you talk about what happened on the tip sheet this past Saturday?
Yeah, there was some pick five hitting going on. There was you hit it Aqueduct. We both hit Aqueduct pick five on the show on Thursday or whenever we recorded that show. I think it was Thursday. And then was there a hit of the Gulfstream? None of us hit the Gulfstream pick five, did we?
No, you did, I think, actually.
No, I didn't hit the Gulfstream. What was it, $82, $76?
I thought you did. No, maybe not. Okay.
No, not the Gulfstream.
Who wants that one anyway, right? That was
I don't think, unless you played all straight, then I don't really know if you wanted that one.
It was good. And the play of the day, Chili Flag came through. I mean, she was the favorite.
Yeah, that was
Hey, listen, anytime a play of the day comes through, you can pair that up with a double or, a straight exacta or whatever. So that was nice to come through. So, it was another good weekend for our Power Picks tip sheet. Below the video player, information about our Power Picks tip sheet. Just hit that, click the show more button, everyone, on our YouTube channel. You can find out. And of course, Pete got a great website, hhhracingpodcast.com, with all sorts of info. No online store information anymore. Is that closed? Yes, Pete, I did get some numbers. We had a lot more people bought merch this year than the last time, so that was very good. And of course,
thank you, everyone.
We're on Instagram as well. And I think that covers it. All right, Pete, let's get into it. I think now is the perfect time to bring... Oh, sorry, before I bring on my guest, we got an extra show this week. Tomorrow, myself, Matt Miller, Chris Larmy, one of the best handicappers and contest players in the world, along with Matt Miller, of course, and Justin Mustari, who, of course, won the NHC a few years back. The four of us are going to chop up NHC 2024 in Vegas. Pete, the contest is in a week and a half. It's the 20th anniversary. We're going to talk about strategy, preparation, fun things to do in Vegas. I hear there's a few fun things you can do in Vegas, Pete. Rumor has it.
Yeah, probably not for my kind of stuff isn't probably made for the family atmosphere of our show. But yeah, I hear there's some fun stuff. Plus, I'll toot your guys' horn a bit. It's a great show. Not if you're just in the NHC. I mean, you can learn things related to all contests, and then hopefully, some of the tips you learn can get you into next year's NHC. But yeah, it's for contest play. I haven't heard it yet. Obviously, it hasn't happened, but from past ones that you guys have done, there's a lot of great tips for contest play.
And last thing before I bring on my guest, and my guest is like, when am I coming on? By the way, guests in the background, if you can hear me, give me a quick thumbs up. Just make sure she's waiting in the green room. All right, we'll bring her on in just a second. We got to get some shout outs to some very dedicated viewers of the show that I sent an email about today, Pete. Terry Frank from St. Louis, who I met in person, who's a big supporter of the show, just became Rookie of the Year, Pete, on the NHC Tour, had the most points. That's awesome. Congratulations to Terry Frank of St. Louis. And also this gentleman who's in the chat right here, Racing Downwind, known as David Duncan's his real name. He was, I think, 4th or 5th in the point standings for Rookie of the Year. So, Pete, people that are following the show do well in live money contests, do well in everything. Congratulations, especially to Terry and Dave, Pete, 2 great stories for the podcast and for
Yeah,
them, of
that's
course,
awesome.
personally.
Congratulations. Hopefully, watching the podcast didn't drop Dave down from 1 to 5, but
Hopefully
1 to
not.
4. But hopefully they watch the show, and hopefully we get out some tips, and they give out some good tips when they're in the chat too. So I mean, it's a community where there's good information passed around by everyone.
Absolutely. Matt, you never scare anyone away. Matt's in the chat. Look, Gizmo's in the chat. What's up, Gizmo? Good evening. Katie is here. What's up, Katie? Racing down. Dave Duncan, again, congratulations to you, sir, on your great year. Let's see. Jeremy Scott. That's a name I don't think I know, Pete. Evening, all. Quite
Welcome.
an interesting weekend to recap. Looking forward to it. Absolutely, Jeremy. Matt Cutera of Adelphi Racing is in the chat. Thank you, Matt. I got to represent for Adelphi for sure. And okay, there's many other people. Let's bring her on. Oh, she just stepped off the screen. There she is. Okay, here we go. Pete, we've got a fan. Again, it sounds a little bit weird to say fan, but that's what we'll call her. A viewer who, Pete, she has been with us, with me on this show a long time. She's one of the first people in the chat, like, consistently, that I can remember way back from our days in 2021, and I had the chance to meet her a few times. She lives in Lexington. She has become an excellent contest player, especially the $2 mythical win in place. I'm sure she will admit that she's come a long way, and she's a very solid handicapper and huge horse racing fan. Let's bring her on right now from Lexington, Kentucky, Trish Smith. Hey, Trish, how you doing tonight?
What's up, Trish?
Really good. I was just thinking about that, and because I remember when I don't think you have any of those, when you were like doing the Zoom, just like, do you remember that when everybody would just like Zoom chat and stuff? Yeah, I do think that I was back way in the day.
Oh yeah, I know. Listen, I laugh. We had no idea what we were doing. Now we got fancy StreamYard here, and we're all set. Trish, a few quick things. First of all, and I believe I'm speaking correctly. Congratulations on a relatively new engagement to get married, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yep. I'm excited.
Congratulations.
A little bit of a derby themed wedding, maybe. So.
Okay. And how are the dogs? How are the dogs? And have there been recent competitions?
Yeah, they have been doing really good. That's actually when I told you don't pull up, because my one dog just did a jailbreak and he got out of his crate because he's an escape artist. And so all I just hear is just this running and like just completely pounded the door. And so I'm like, okay, I should make sure that he's okay. But he's put up now and he's all good. So that's my Doberman. He's a little bit on the wily side.
We understand. Trish, you got fans like Jim Pilars, who you've seen in the chat from Buffalo. Yep. Hello, Trish. Looking forward to getting some female perspective. It's about time, Pete. We talked to the smart people on this show for sure. Cool Kev75. Put Trish info on the chat to get her picks. There you go, people. Trish, if you want to throw out your X handle or whatever, we can do that. Let's wait till the end of the show.
Yeah.
We'll get all your particulars. Anything.
Speaking of dogs, so.
Tom Espinoza from San Francisco. Cool to see Trish on the show. Dave Duncan, Racing Downwind, welcome to the show. Trish, Matt Miller, look at this. P, I think you and I should just get off the screen.
I mean, that's fine. I'll just sit back and Trish, take it away. Let's do it.
Mark Bogaz, Lexington area equals horse knowledge. I think we'd all agree with that as well. Trish, real quick before we get into the recapping, just tell everyone when you started watching our show and how you found out about the HHH Racing podcast.
Well, it was actually so way back because I just started getting into horse racing in 2020 when everything was shut down and I needed a hobby like a lot of people at the time. And so I started watching the Matt Bernier show, and it was actually you were on the show beforehand. And it was, I think, the one that I won to be on the show after yours. And so that's kind of, so I saw you on that. And so ever since then, the Matt Bernier show. And I think, Pete, you are also on the Matt Bernier show?
Yeah, a couple of times. That's how Howard and I sort of became acquainted, was just because we had both been on that show.
Yeah,
and the rest have been downhill since Pete. Sorry, Trish, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. But yeah, so it kind of became like just a little bit of a family, I'd say, especially when you're new to something. And it is nice because I will say horse racing, it's amazing in the fact, like, there's always downsides, but I do wish that people would focus on the positive and how so many people have been so nice and will go out of their way to be like, oh, we will set you up with tickets. And they're just wonderful when you go to the track, especially Keeneland. Their hospitality is just, par for none in my opinion. So it's been a really fun time. And then, so as soon as you said you were starting the show, I remember when I would just get on the Zoom and then, and that was a little bit of, I remember some of the crazy things. We don't need to go into all the details. It was an interesting time, but now especially to see like where you guys have gone and stuff. And you guys are doing such a good job of like, promoting the sport, and also even with other racing podcasts, I like to see when people are just promoting the sport as a whole.
Yes, we agree. I hope this is your fiance, and if not, someone's very jealous. Trish, I love you from Church Crew. Do we need to know who that is?
Yes, that is Katie, and she's one of my bridesmaids who's actually
cool.
And then her husband is my fiance Jonathan's best friend, so they've been best friends for years. Nice. So yeah, she's
hello, Katie.
Jonathan won't get jealous, I promise.
Okay. And I met you, and I think I met Jonathan the first time I was at Keelan. I think that was Jonathan with you, right?
Yes.
And so yeah, that was really cool, Pete. That I had a chance to meet Trish,
awesome.
And I've seen you. I think I've seen you one or two other times in my Keelan trips. And by the way, I'll be there second week of April for the Grade 1 Gamble, as well as Matt Miller and Paul Halloran and a few of us. So we'll have to talk.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's either the first or the second. I'm going to be in Chicago one of those weekends, but I can't. I know. So, but for sure, if I am in town that weekend though.
Okay, I hope it's not one of those crisscross deals.
Yeah,
but,
hometowns.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listen. People are wondering. I'd like to be on the show. I talked about this. Usually, it's. I mean, if anyone wanted me in the show, Pete, we'd have 1,000 people on. But so it's sort of invite only. But I will say, if you are a viewer and you're a regular viewer and you'd like to be on the show like Trish is tonight on our Monday Night Horsin Around, send me an email and just say I'm interested in being on the show as a guest, and we'll talk and we'll try to get you on. Because Pete, I don't want to make this only like famous people on our money shows. We want to bring in the fans, and that was the main reasons why we did this in the first place, right, Pete?
Yep, 100%. So Absolutely. It's nice to have, and plus we get so much good people, and they're so we get such good participation in our chat that it's worthwhile having some people on the screen. You could put a face to the name for some of the people. I mean, we don't meet any of these people, and it's nice to see everyone in person. You don't get to meet all of them, or they don't get to meet each other. So it's nice to see. And that's how we got started too. We got started by just jumping on a random podcast one week by winning a contest, all three of us. So it's good karma. It's good karma to sort of pay it forward a little bit, and that's what we can do.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. All right, let's get into the we're going to go pretty quickly, but Trish, before you came on, Pete and I were talking. I don't know how to describe this weekend other than just weird, bizarre. There's a lot of weird stuff happened. That being said, there are a lot of derby points that were given out, and we got to talk about it. So the first race we're going to talk about briefly is what happened at Gulfstream. And of course, Gulfstream was the Fountain of Youth. And I'm going to go ahead right now and show the results. And there it is, Dornoch, of course, winning the Fountain of Youth at a very low price. And the main reason it was a very low price, of course, is because the one of the main stories of this race, and I'll just show the scratches that people can see at the top. First, it was actually Speakeasy is still on the screen, but first it was Victory Avenue, then it was Locked, I think, in that order, and then it was Speakeasy. And Trish, unfortunately, it basically became a one-horse race. Before we get into the scratches and everything, Trish, and I'll show the stretch run because Dornoch was a little bit goofy. What was your overall impressions of Dornoch winning the Fountain of Youth?
So at first I was like, I was hoping he was going to win by like 5 lengths, especially after Speakeasy scratch. Because I'll admit, I was way higher on Speakeasy. I love that horse. And I was just telling my sister how professional I think he is, even in one start. Then they zoom the camera in, and all you see is him, and he dumped the rider. I don't know. Did any of you guys see him actually like dump? Like what exactly happened with Speakeasy?
We didn't see it. I don't think anyone saw it, but I could tell you what happened. But anyway, I'm just going to go to the stretch. I'll talk about Speakeasy here. I mean, he got the job done. Danny Gargan, the trainer, Trish said he was not cranked, and so it's nice when a trainer is honest because you got a high 80s buyer. I mean, can you glean anything at all from this race?
Well, I was just going to say the Danny Gargan interview afterwards when he just straight up, I don't know if you watched the NBC afterwards in the winner's circle when he was just like, I didn't think we were going to win this race. And I was like, oh, that's a little shocking. And he's like, we were just able to win the race because of all the scratches. And that also didn't make me feel confident. And then he's like, this horse has been on pasture rest and has 5 workouts. And so none of this, I was like, ugh. So moving forward, and I didn't like, I think he's going to come in when he got a little funky with his lead there. And granted, he's been a horse that has a little bit of funkiness in general, but it just wasn't really an impressive win, in my opinion. I mean, a win's a win. And granted, he wasn't cranked up. And granted, I mean, he's going to get points regardless. So maybe they didn't ask him. But even I expected him to win by at least 4 or 5 lengths, not trying. And, you know, it was very underwhelming. And then especially when the interview with Danny Gargan, I'm like, ew, that's not really what I want to hear this close out. I mean, we're not super close to the Derby, but I'd like to hear that the horse is doing a little bit better than what was insinuated.
Trish, Speak Easy dropped Irad on the back just in the warm up, and then went into the rail. I don't think he actually ran. I don't think it was violently, but he did he went into the rail and he got a scrape, or he scraped himself, and out of precautionary measures they scratch him. That's basically what happened. The horse is fine. I think they're not. I think Pletcher. Pete said he's going to miss a week or two, though. So it's a little bit, this is not the time to be missing races. Pete, before we can talk about Speak Easy, but does this mean anything for Sierra Leone, the way Dornoch reacted in this race and the way that he run? Does that tell you anything about Sierra Leone, or is it two complete separate situations to you?
No, I think it's completely separate situations. I mean, still, the Remsen has come back and been flattered in a sense. I mean, even though Dornoch wasn't super impressive, he still came back and won. And I mean, it was off a pretty lengthy layoff. And again, if he wasn't fully cranked up. So I think nothing else, you just take it as the horse didn't run badly. He just didn't run great. And you expect against sort of a soft field, maybe a better performance, just like Trish said. But I tend not to look at it that way, because all of the horses are going to train up their own way. Trainers do things a little bit different. The horses react a little bit different. You want to see them in their second start, I think. And you want to see Dornoch in his second start. And when he's a little bit, I mean, I thought he took a little bit of pressure. It wasn't the best field, but they made him work a little bit. They didn't just let him go on the lead and just have it his own way. He at least, he had to fight a little bit, and he did draw away. And they said he's a little goofy where he lets horses stay close. And you saw that in the Remsen too, where he sort of let Sierra Leone got by and then he fought. I mean, which was impressive enough. To me, it's been par for the course. This hasn't been a superstar laden Kentucky prep season. We haven't seen like that one fantastic performance that just made you jump out of your seat and say, oh, that looks like a Derby winner. You saw horses that are all sort of fighting for the same, they're at the same trough together, it feels like.
Trish, in the futures, and we know the Derby futures are a complete mess in Vegas, and the Kentucky Derby future wager right now, latest I saw is Dornoch and Sierra Leone are both approximately plus 850 or 8.5 to 1. I'd love to hear your opinion real quick, and then we're going to move on. And comments in the chat. Is Dornoch, as of this moment, to you, a serious top 3 Derby contender right now? Would you say yes or no? And people in the chat, just simply put a yes or no on Dornoch being, let's say, a top 3 contender for the Derby right now. Trish?
Yes, but I have him in 3rd right now. And I definitely think Sierra Leone moved up, in my opinion. I think that he's a type that could be moving forward, and I like what I've seen out of Sierra Leone a lot more than what I've seen out of Dornoch so far. So he's still in my top 3, I think, but just barely, and it wouldn't surprise me if he goes down a little bit more.
We've got a lot of no's in the chat, and I will just say this, and then we can talk. Sean Kane, yes, Singh says, it's about 50-50, guys. Keep them coming. The last thing I'll say, then we'll talk briefly about Locked and the scratches. I don't mind the slight lowering of his buyer, guys. Like, that was sort of expected to me, or running about the same. He clearly is not cranked. That's not what concerns me if you're a Dornoch fan. What concerns me is his goofiness. This is like 4th or 5th start already. There's no reason for him to be goofy, guys. It's not like there were horses around him. He was just alone in the stretch playing around. You cannot play around in the Derby at all. As you said, Pete, not only did he let Sierra Leone sort of go by or whatever, he went into the rail before that for no reason. Yeah. So, look, I think Dornoch is about as talented as anyone out there, but this goofiness is just they've got to figure that shit out, Pete.
Yeah, and we talk about that. We talked about that with a couple of horses so far on this trail, and you only have one more. I don't know where I don't remember where they said if he's definitely going to Florida or Bluegrass. I think it was one of the two, right? So that's the race. If you don't get it figured out, then you don't want it goofy, like you said. You don't want goofiness in the Derby because one little bump, one little misstep, one little whatever, and you're all of a sudden you're in 19th, and that could happen pretty quickly. So I think they want to straighten it out. But he's tactical. He can make his own trip. So he's got some of the qualities you like out of a Derby horse. And again, in a class that hasn't really separated, where no one's separated themselves in terms of just from a figure standpoint. No one's really separated themselves. So a lot of it's going to come down to trip, post, all that kind of stuff. And then if you're sort of professional enough to navigate the horses in a 20 horse field. So I guess we'll see. But I'm closer to probably a yes, but I was always a little bit lukewarm on him anyway.
Trish and Pete, both you just really snapshot thoughts on where they go or what do you do or their Derby prospects. It's all the same with Locked, Speak Easy, and Victory Avenue, who's also talented but hasn't broken his maiden yet. Trish, you can take any of those three, all those three very quickly. Your thoughts on those three?
Well, so Locked, is this the second time that he's scratched out of a Derby?
He wasn't scratched in his previous race, but he got sick, and they were going to run him in the Holy
Sam
Bull,
F.
right?
Davis. No, I was Sam F. Davis. I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's
but
what
he
it was.
wasn't a scratch. He wasn't entered, Trish, but you could call it a scratch if you want. Yeah.
I guess I don't like that about Locked. I'm kind of I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him back on the trail. That being said, I don't know. Is anybody pointing to the Tampa Bay, like especially like a Speakeasy? I was in Victory Avenue.
The entries come out Wednesday, and I don't think so. I think Pletcher said Speakeasy's out for like a week or two here, so it's a very unusual, Trish, that he would scratch on race day in this situation and then run at Tampa. It's almost like you missed a work. So I'd be very, very surprised if Speakeasy runs at Tampa. Locked wouldn't shock me. I don't know. Pletcher's been a little bit quiet about Locked.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I saw that, and because I thought that he was supposed to be entered, even if it wasn't an official scratch, and I don't really like how quiet he's been. And then Speakeasy, I really love. I mean, his first out performance, 100 buyer. I love that horse, and I think he's just a gorgeous horse, a lot of talent, and so I really hope to see him at the Florida Derby. Then, I mean, that would kind of be a lot in a second career start, and then heading straight to the Derby. But I guess if they're not running in any other races, I'm not really sure where else he would go. So if I had to guess, probably the Florida Derby.
Pete, your thought on any of those three going forward?
I'm sort of in agreement with Trish. I mean, I think we all thought Locked was a top contender, and now everything is going wrong. He's just having the sort of the prep season from hell, as you would say, in other sports, and it's hard to come back from that. And again, Speakeasy is so inexperienced, and I mean, yeah, he looked great in his debut. We've seen a lot of horses look great in their debut and then sort of not look so great when they came back next time. And then Victory Avenue is a nice quality horse as well. I didn't hear anything. I didn't read anything necessarily, so I don't know what the next steps are for him. So, I mean, they're all question marks to me. I mean, I had Locked. I do my top 10 and I put it on our website. I had Locked, I think, in like third or something, somewhere around there, and now I just dropped him to basically tied for 10th because he's such a question mark that at some point you have to get points, and at some point you have to be fit enough to be in the Derby, or a trainer's not going to most likely put you there, especially if you can just skip it and go to the Preakness or go to the Belmont. A horse like Locked could probably do well there. There we go. There's another one. I think
Matthew Shimura, Conquest Warrior, who won that allowance race on Friday, although it was slow, it came back a little slow though, but he did it really easily. So I think this horse is pretty talented. Let's go on to New York. The last thing I will say about Gulfstream, I don't know if you guys feel this way. I was texting someone over the weekend. It feels like Pletcher could have one Derby horse or literally like 5 if things work out well for him. I mean, he's got some really nice 3-year-olds, but it's just been like the Tuscan Sky is a real nice horse, won that allowance at Fairgrounds on the Risen Star Day. It's just that's how it goes, man. That's why as happy as I am Sierra Leone, Trish, I mean, knock on wood, but I mean, you just never know with these horses. You just never know what's going to happen with their health. Let's go ahead and move on to Aqueduct. And I got to tell you, people can talk about the 90 whatever buyer in California, which we're going to mention very briefly. I thought Deterministic in the Gotham was by far the most impressive effort of the weekend, and I am super impressed with this horse. Now, full disclosure, I do have a small Derby future on him as a backup to Sierra Leone as well as Forever Young, Trish. So I guess I'm a little biased, but I think it's very fair to say you really have to be impressed with Deterministic here, who won the Gotham in the complete slop, paying almost 4-1, closing well on the outside and then coming up the inside. He got a 93 buyer, but Trish, this is an amazing training job for Clement because the Deterministic had not run since Saratoga over the summer, and to come off this layoff against some pretty decent horses in El Grande O and Just a Touch, who looks like has a bright future. This to me was super impressive Saturday.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That I completely agree with you. I think it was the most impressive of the weekend as well. And I think Christopher Clement is a really easy guy to like and root for. So I'm glad that he has a Derby horse. And I mean, only the second start, but I really liked. He went right in between the horses. He seemed very confident down the stretch, which especially in a second start, I thought was very impressive for him.
For sure. Now, I mean, he's bred very well. I'll go ahead and look at. It's hard to see. He's by Liam's map. So out of a Speightstown mare, the breeding doesn't necessarily, scream out 1.25 miles, Pete. But the way this horse runs, and when you win 7 furlongs in your debut, you have to be super impressed. I have a hard time believing he's not a 1.25 mile horse. He's the 3. And when they go back to the pan, I love the fact that he had more tactical speed, Pete, because he did not get out of the gate very well. He's in these pink silks. He's taking a lot of mud. I mean, there's nothing not to like about this effort. I'll let you talk about it from the top of the stretch on here, Pete.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and he was very impressive, and it was a nice comeback, and obviously it was from a figure standpoint, it came back well, and you do like the way he sort of moved throughout the track. The only question I have about the performance, and this has been a little bit of a theme in this prep season, is this horse is bred completely on top and bottom to love the wet. And did the wet move him up a lot to where he just took to the track a lot better than the rest of them, and that made him look even better? I'm not saying yes or no. I just say that's a question, because if you look, he's got 21% wins on Liam's map side on wet dirt, and on the dam side, 5 for 5 in the money, 3 wins, I think, on the wet and out of a Speightstown, the mare's out of Speightstown. So there's a lot to like on a wet surface there. So did that just bring him forward? Again, it's really hard to know because a lot of these preps have been on off tracks. So it's hard to gauge. We said this last week too, or whenever on a couple shows. It's hard to gauge who's moving forward by the wet surfaces and who's being negatively affected by the wet surfaces. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult handicapping, I think, especially if you're looking a couple months out to what we hope will be a fast track on Derby Day.
Yeah, Trish, has been an unusual amount of wet tracks in these Derby preps, and including Sierra Leone, to be fair. But Chad said that Sierra Leone trains well on fast dirt, and he won his first race on dirt. So, Pete, it'll be interesting to see. Now, Christophe Clement, guys, was on Steve Dick this morning on his show, and he hinted, I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, they might actually train him up to the Derby. Now, that seems to be an interesting idea. I would personally disagree with that, which sounds silly because who am I to disagree with Christophe Clement? But I would personally, if you're a fan of this horse, Trish, I'd like to see one more start just to get him a little more experience. But I guess they know best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, to the comment about the wet track, I'm like, this might be the first Derby where we're asking ourselves what horses, how they run on a fast track. Instead, it's always like, how will they handle the slop?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Where it's like, because there's a few horses I can think of that it's like they've only ran on slop, especially because Saratoga was so wet the entire season, and we've just had such bad rain and stuff. There's a few horses I don't even think have ran on a fast track.
Yeah.
Racing Downwind says David, I respect your opinion, but what we've seen, Pete, it's hard for me to, I don't know how you make that judgment based on what we've seen visually. I'm going to disagree with that.
I mean, I think too, and everyone sort of has to make that judgment, and you don't really know. I mean, you could see some or not at all, but there's some you just don't know. Even when they look like they are, the 1.25 miles gets to some. And that's one of the great things about the Derby is that unknown is always there. And I don't care how great you're bred, how much you look like you can get the distance. Sometimes you can't. And again, but for RDW there, for Dave, that's something that he'll have to take into consideration when he's handicapping this horse, and I think a lot will.
Gizmo wants me to get on the phone. Well, listen, I got Miguel on my cell. No, listen, they don't need me to tell them how to train. That's for damn sure. So
Yeah, but those long layoffs haven't worked all that great
no.
going into the Derby. So
No.
even though trainers know better, history sometimes, Derby is a lot about history, and Derby history has been unkind to those lengthy layoffs.
It's true. Al Grande O, which is a cool New York bred, boy, do I hope he gets in the Derby. You know why, guys? All he's going to do is quicken up that early pace for our boys.
Yeah.
So Al Grande O should not go to the Derby, but he's going to have enough points. I mean, 30 points. We'll show the points leaderboard at the end, guys. I think he's got enough points right now, to be very honest.
Oh, yeah, he's in if they want it. Yeah.
Trish, you know that Derby fever. What is it? What does Paul call it? Derby DFS, right? Derby fever syndrome.
Yeah.
If I had a horse that could run in the Derby, even if it was a turf sprinter, I'm not gonna lie, that would be hard to pass up. Like, even if it's like I know this horse is gonna be a turf sprinter, if he had enough points to make the gate for Saturday in May, the walkover to say you have a horse in the Derby, that's pretty hard to.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty tough. So we'll see what happens. Let's go to California now. Look, we're gonna go very briefly. It's a 4-horse field, and the 2 horses. And in fact, I'm not going to show the replay, guys, out of respect. But the 2 horses that were 1-2 were Baffert's. They're not going to the Derby. Obviously, I'll just go ahead and show it, though, out of respect to the Derby Trail or just 3-year-olds in general. These 2 went 1-2 around the track. Scatify had an issue on the first turn, guys, and messed up McVeigh also. And it's basically a workout. I mean, now, how talented are these horses? I'll let everyone else decide. The buyer came back really good. I mean, really good, 96. But again, guys, it's like neither one of them had any issues whatsoever in the race. They basically ran as fast as they could for as long as they could. I don't want any part of these horses, especially wind me up, like in a real big race. That's just my opinion. It's not Baffert hatred, so please don't put in the comment, oh, he hates Baffert. This has nothing to do with Baffert. I'm just talking about from a pure trip, and handicapping standpoint, guys. They went 1-2 around the track with, no one to go by or they didn't have to rate. And so they ran fast, and it's Santa Anita, and they train there, and good for them. But I'm against both of them in a different situation. That's my thought. Either one of you want to comment on that?
Go ahead, Trish. You got anything?
I mean, it was a Bob Baffert workout, and I don't know if Scatify ends up in the Derby. That is the prime example of a horse who needs the lead and wants the lead, because he was just, I mean, all sorts of crazy strung up. And even McVeigh also doesn't really seem like a horse that's very professional. So
I'll show the first turn, Trish. Sorry to interrupt you. You can just watch the first. We'll show the first turn, and I'll show the stretch run.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
He is just so rank. I mean, and you can see because the jockey is trying his best. I mean, he is full on brakes. You can tell that the jockey is trying to control him, but this is a horse that just desperately wants to lead. Yeah, and I mean, it looks in a 4-horse field to end up with clipping heels like that is insane. The McVeigh horse, I think I've seen some workouts of him, and he can be a little bit odd and like drift out pretty wide too. And so, I mean, and obviously, I mean, the Bafferts just destroyed them. I mean, after that, they ran off and they were just working. And so it's hard to really take anything out of this race. I'm assuming the other 2, they're pointing to the Santa Anita Derby, try to get some points. I don't know. I don't want any of them in the Derby, though. I wouldn't want to bet at this point Scatify or McVeigh in the Derby.
Yeah, I do have information on Scatify, but I got it from some West Point people, and I didn't ask them to give permission to talk about it, so I'm not going to say anything about Scatify, guys. Although I do think he's talented. I think McVeigh's talented also, Pete. But again, if Nisos goes to the Santa Anita Derby, you're basically fighting for second or third. Second gets you into the Derby, by the way. Third, we don't know. I think it'd be best for them to go out of town, frankly, and try to find a spot if they want to go down to the Derby.
Yeah, it's a tough call. Although if you're in a short field against 4 horses again in the Santa Anita, then you're almost guaranteed at least points. Whereas if you go elsewhere, you don't know if you're going to come up against a decent field. It's hard to know. I mean, yeah, I'm with Trish. I'm I'm not jumping in line to pick either one of those horses. And I don't mind Imagination as a horse, actually. I think Imagination might be a horse that's on the improve. Again, I don't know if I'm trying to bet the horse next out against, in the Santa Anita Derby against Nisos or anything, but I think that's a nice horse. And, I don't want to take anything away. He still had to win the race and he had to fight down the lane, got a good figure out of it. I mean, that's something. You got to win against who's in there. It's not their fault. So
No,
he could be a better horse than you don't really know until we see them progress a little bit.
I like Imagination more than Wind Me Up. I never thought
too.
Wind Me Up is a 2-turn horse. He ran much better than I thought. I think Matt Miller sums it up well. Matt says, I'm not sure I would hold this ridiculous race against the top two finishers, but I'm not sure I'd give it a ton of credit for the fast buyers either. I think that's a good way
Fair
of
enough. Yeah, that's
saying
fair
it.
enough.
I don't mean to be too harsh on the top two. I'm just saying I like to see them face some adversity in a different situation other than 4-horse field. Noah Maher. What's up, Noah? Co-host of Bet and Boozin', doing a great job with the Bet and Boozin' guys. Says Scatify is not a 2-turn horse. If he was really that good, Sadler would have tried to get points elsewhere. Interesting. We'll see. Again, I have an idea what they're going to do with him, but I'm not privy to say. So we'll see what happens with him. Let's see here. Other comments I'm looking. Any other thoughts? It just doesn't. Baffert also said Baffert was on Steve Vick, which I never get to hear, guys, because I'm at work normally, but we had no school today. Baffert said that Pilot Commander, which is a horse some people may know, they're pulling back on him, that he's not really going to be a Derby. He's not going to be on the Derby trail. He also said Arabian Night just started working back, by the way, not a 3-year-old, but just want to mention that. And that they're thinking Nisos for the Santa Anita Derby is what they're thinking. And maybe the two that we just saw maybe go elsewhere. It was the thought. So
Sounds right.
Yeah, that sounds logical to me. So we'll see what happens.
Jim put a good question in there talking about Nisos.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, for the audio, I almost pulled the trigger on a large Preakness future bet on Nisos at 5-2. Any thoughts on that potential wager?
Trish, would you put a 5-2 win bet on for the Preakness right now on Nisos?
My rule for future bets is they have to be over 20 or 1 at least. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. I know that everybody has something different. For me, for a future bet, it has to be 20 to 1, and that's like even kind of low. I would prefer like what you guys, Sierra Leone, like the really big crazy numbers. In my opinion, that's just my personal.
You would admit, though, Trish, this is a little bit different situation because Nisos will not run in the Derby, and basically the Preakness is his Derby. So, although I agree with you that 5-2 is still a little low for me, Pete, I would probably take like 4 or 5-1 to be very honest. Because, I guess Trish, the big deal is who's going to come out of the Derby into the Preakness, right? I think but we have we've absolutely no idea who's going to run both races.
Yeah, and then also just keeping him healthy because if he's scratched and I still don't really know why. I guess he wasn't feeling it. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I don't know. There's always the worry. It's like, okay, are they going to make it to the race? And that's part of the reason why I just will only bet futures if they're at really large odds.
Pete Baffert said this morning he just didn't feel like he needed to run in that race. I thought Steve Bick asked a very pointed question, which is he said pointedly that some people, he said it to Baffert's face on the radio, some people thought that he entered to scratch. Baffert, of course, fully denied that. People can believe that or not. And said he doesn't really need the run. He doesn't need the points. But then why enter? Like, I don't know. Just the whole thing is weird, Pete. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I know the conspiracy was they entered to scare everyone else away.
Right,
So it was other horses. Right. And I mean, it's not like Baffert has to do that anyway. He enters horses and people run at Santa Anita or on the West Coast anyway. But I don't know. I don't care about any of that stuff. Nisos is great. I hope he makes the Preakness. I hope he's there because I always want to see the great horses in the big races. So that's the way I look at it.
Let's briefly talk about the John Battaglia, which is a points race that happened at Turfway, which I admit I don't feel bad about it, Pete, but we did sort of went under the radar on this podcast. There's only so much we can cover, on our shows in a week's time. And but I'm not going to show the this is actually just the chart. It's from Equibase. And this was won by a Godolphin horse in Sino, ridden by a really nice young jockey, by the way, Axel Concepcion. People are not paying attention. He upset epic ride. I'm not going to show the replay or talk much about the race other than that Encino got 20 points. It's a Godolphin horse, guys. And don't poo-poo on this, synthetic trail, because I know, Rich Strike was a complete bomb, but Churchill, as we've talked about, Trish, can be okay for turf or sin horses on their dirt. It's not like those horses can't run on Churchill's surface. Not much for Keeneland. It's just bizarre how those surfaces are different, even though they're both in Kentucky. I guess my point here, Trish, in showing this is don't sleep on horses coming from a synthetic track.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, of all of the races, I would say that this trifecta, the top 3 finishers, are the only ones that I'm interested in looking at, because I really think all of those 3 horses are very talented. Blue Eyed George, Encino, Epic Ride. Maybe I'm just biased from Kentucky, but I honestly think that that was a pretty good field. I like those top 3 finishers a lot, and especially Encino. I mean, Godolphin has been trying to win the Kentucky Derby forever,
Yes.
and and they've been spending a lot of money trying to win the Kentucky Derby forever as well. And honestly, I think he's a really talented horse. And I mean, 2 fills came out of Turfway. I think Turfway form is,
Yes.
it's not something to just poo-poo and just throw away. I'm really excited for the Jeff Ruby Stakes.
Good call. The Jeff Ruby stakes, I think, is
Is that-
sort of
yeah.
like it's like the very one that happened at Gulfstream.
Exactly.
It's called the very one. So do you say the very one, or you just
Yeah.
Technically,
Exactly.
yes.
Pete? I also think the sin horses. I do think it helps their stamina. I don't know why. I don't know the science behind it. It just feels like those horses can run all day. Can they run fast enough? I don't know, but I'm gonna.
What
keep
did the
my
buyer
eye
come back?
on-
Did you see? I didn't see I don't remember the buyer. What did it come back? Do you know?
I think it was low 90s, actually. I
Was
don't
it?
It was in
recall.
the 90s.
Was it? I thought so. I couldn't remember. I know
Yeah,
I
I
saw
think
it
so.
somewhere.
It was decent.
I mean, that's solid. I mean, and again, you don't know what Trish said. If they could be talented, and you don't. We've learned not to overlook synth horses anymore, especially when it comes to the Derby. Now, again, whether we'll see what happens next out, like anything, you see what happens next out. It's one race. They could have run well. I liked Encino. I liked just watching the way he ran. I thought he was relatively impressive. Again, I didn't handicap the race enough to know how the rest of the field stacked up, though. Trish, it seemed like you were more acquainted with them. I didn't know how the rest of the field stacked up. I didn't like the Epic Time. What was his name? Epic. I didn't like how he ran
Epic
necessarily. Epic Ride. I didn't like watching him how he ran. I thought he sort of flattened out a bit to me, but
Yeah, it wasn't his best effort, but overall, I think he is a good horse.
yeah,
So
overall, I think he is too.
Kind
Yeah.
of just a bad. I'm willing to kind of give him a one-off.
Okay.
Because I do follow Turfway a fair amount, and I thought the field was actually pretty good. And just like I said, from a trifecta standpoint of all those races, I would pick the Turfway one over any of the other ones.
Beautiful.
So breezing, we should celebrate Battaglia with full field of over 4 horse allowance race to Santa Anita. Look, that's the West. That's the story right now. I'm not going to completely disagree with you. I will. Last point from Jim, guys. Then we'll show the points leaderboard. Then we'll end the show. There is something new that Stronach put out, guys. I'm sure you saw it. There's a bonus for winning the Preakness, what they're going to call the California Cup, which is going to be a big 3-year-old race. I think it's going to be for older horses, or for either one in the fall, and then the Pegasus. So there's like a 3 race. If you win all 3, you get a big bonus. So that's what Jim is talking about at the bottom of the screen. Nisos would be, in theory, a perfect candidate. I almost feel like that was made for Nisos and Baffert.
Yeah.
Shocker, right?
I'll take it. I'd take it if I was them.
Yep.
I'll take that trail instead of you can make a little bit more money than even on the Triple Crown trail there. So I'll take
For
it.
sure. Let's go to the leaderboard, guys. Here's the updated Kentucky Derby leaderboard. You got Timberlake. Let's see if I can make it any. No, we're good. This is big enough. People know it or can see it. Timberlake, Dornox, Sierra Leone, Track Phantom, Deterministic. A lot of question marks. Fierceness, El Grande O. Stronghold, Catching Freedom, Just a Touch. If they go on with it, has 25 points. You got Hades, who's going to run in the Florida Derby. No More Time. I would expect to see him in the Tampa Bay Derby, guys. I mean, he won the Sam F. Davis, so I'm assuming No More Time is going to be entered for this upcoming weekend. There's Encino. Locked has 19. I don't think that's going to be enough, guys, right now for the Derby. I'd be very surprised. McVeigh, etc. Hard to answer this question, Trish, but that's why we have you on the show. How many points are going to be needed to get into this year's Kentucky Derby? Would be your guess.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one, especially because if there's scratches, which I'm anticipating probably, especially with a lot of the new rules, at least maybe 1 or 2 scratches possibly going forward. Oh gosh, that's tough.
It's usually been around 30 to
Yeah,
35.
I was gonna say about 30, but honestly, this year, especially with California, maybe 25. Maybe I'm not sure.
I
No,
think
I
that's
think
about
that's
right,
fair.
Pete. That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say, 25.
I was going to say 30, but I think we're all in the same neighborhood. I don't think that's why we were saying if you can get second in one of these, you can get third. You could just accumulate. You don't have to get the 50. You can just get 20 here, 10 here, and I think you can get in the gate. And half the time that's the battle right there.
Let's put that in the chat too as the last sort of community question for everyone watching. And we really appreciate everyone watching tonight. We'll end here in just a few minutes, but how many points will it take to get into the Derby? Now, you have to remember there's going to be a one horse will qualify from Asia if they decide to go. Right now, Forever Young, by the way, is second in those standings and has not, I repeat, has not qualified for the Derby as of right now, but he is going to the UAE Derby in Dubai at the end of the month, and you'd have to figure he'll get some points there and probably qualify for the Derby. We don't know. There's also an entrant available through the European series, but a lot of those horses, Pete and Trish, don't end up going even if they qualify. Someone asked about what about the Aidan O'Brien horse that was pointed to the Derby. If they're talking about City of Troy was never going to be going to the Derby. Aidan O'Brien actually said that on our show last November, but don't rule out City of Troy for like a Breeders' Cup Classic at the end of the year as a possibility. He's a monster 3-year-old who's going to be returning to the races relatively soon. Stoled Breezing says 30, Bittersweet 50. That's not respectfully Bittersweet. That's not going to be it. That's way too high. Mark Bogas 22, Jeremy Scott 30. Yeah, Benny Betts 40. There's a lot of points out there, guys, because there's still 100-point Derby preps, but if the horses that are already in the top like 15, right, win those races or get second, no one's moving up. It's got to be horses that are underneath Trish, obviously.
Yeah.
So It's hard to say. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And then Baffert's going to keep taking points out there, right? So what is the Florida? I mean, but someone's going to finish second in the Santa Anita Derby, and that horse is in. So it's a real dilemma.
Unless it goes Baffert 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I mean,
right? Yeah, I don't.
This week, what did they get? What did the third and fourth place horses get? They got what was it? That was a
15 and 10.
15 and 10, maybe. Yeah. So yeah, if Baffert runs the board, then you're not getting as many points as you would hope.
So he's going to enter 7 in the.
I mean, I wouldn't hold it against him, right?
Scratch 5 of them. It'll be a match race.
Yeah. Well, there was a European one over this weekend too. Earlier in the week, there was a European Derby points race, and there was a whole 3 in that one. There was an Aidan O'Brien in that race, but there was a whole 3 horses in that one. If anybody wants to watch it, the video is on the web. Just to give a quick plug, all the videos for all the preps for the Oaks and the Derby are on our website, so they're all in one place. So you don't have to go searching back and forth. Easy clicks. You can watch them right in the screen. There's a few that have no sound, but that's just because you couldn't get the video correctly. But all the Derby preps, no matter where they are, and all the Oaks preps are on our website for anyone to check them out.
That's awesome. Trish, thanks for coming on. Why don't you talk about any social media that you want to drop or anything in your world, and we'll let Pete end the show with his final comments.
Absolutely. Well, my handle is at Oakley Jeter, so that's my dog's name. I'm a Yankees fan, so there's a Jeter and Oakley, and that's really my only social. So that's all for that.
All right, and you'll be at Keeneland if people are going to be coming to Keeneland.
Yeah.
You'll be at Keeneland. How often do you go to the races next month?
I'm not sure. It's going to depend on my schedule. I know for sure at least a couple of weekends and in the weekday, like a Wednesday and stuff, probably. And then Churchill Downs, Turfway, I'm also there, so. If anybody wants to ever go,
are you going to the Derby this year?
No, unfortunately, not going to the Derby this year. Unfortunately,
you're not going to see Sierra Leone win. All right, well that's all right.
I know. I hope he does, and I hope that Tyler Gaffleone stays on as jockey. I'm not sure if he does because he is like one of my favorite jockeys. I would love to see him get his first Derby win. You guys win a boatload of money on Sierra Leone. That'd be great.
The plan is for him to stay on, by the way. He did get in. He got hurt a little bit. He got dropped in the last race at Gulfstream on Saturday. I think he's okay. I haven't heard details, but I believe he is okay. Well, Trish, I will see you hopefully at Keeneland next month, and maybe well, you're not gonna be at the Derby, so we'll talk before Keeneland. Pete, final thoughts for you? Anything come up in your world, or final thoughts on this weekend, or anything we didn't cover?
Nothing exciting. It's great. It's Derby prep season. So even though this weekend turned out to be not as exciting as we would have hoped, there's a new weekend coming up, and everybody should go see Dune 2. It was awesome. I went to see that. People say I missed all the prep races because I was sitting in a seat with my son in an IMAX watching Dune 2. So if you get a minute, if you get 3 hours, I should say, go check it out. It was awesome.
With the Timothy Chalamet, was it better
Timothy
than the first
Chalamet
one?
is phenomenal. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's better.
Really?
It's more action packed. Yeah, it's
Really
more
better than
action
the first
packed.
one. Okay.
Yeah, I
Wow,
mean,
high praise.
people love it. People love it. Timothy Chalamet, Austin Butler, worth the price of admission, both of them.
All right, there you go. And once again, I'll close by talking about the big show that Jim Pilar's mentioned tomorrow. You guys, everyone wants to, even if you're not a contest player, Pete, you can learn something, because some of the best contests and handicappers in the world, literally, are going to be on our show tomorrow night. Of course, I'm not on that list, but I'll be on the show anyway. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, talking about the NHC, the National Handicapping Championship, which happens in Las Vegas a week from this weekend, where yours truly, Matt Miller, Paul Halloran, of the people that you know the most, will all be participating in that contest. That is going to be very exciting. All right, so for my wonderful guest and viewer, Trish Smith, and co-host Pete Visco, this has been your host, Howard Kravitz, episode 11 of Horsin Around. Thank you for watching. Crush your bets anywhere throughout the country. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.